Today I want to give you my spoiler-free review of Solo. My wife got invited to an advanced private screening of the movie yesterday, but the only kind of catch was that we had to drive all the way out to the suburbs to go do that. So that we got in a zip car, we got a babysitter, we left work early. It was a lot of stuff we had to do, but it was totally worth it because overall, like TLDR, this movie is really, really, really good, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Even my wife loved it. She's not a huge Star Wars fan. Mostly she just humors me, and I tried to explain what the movie was going to be about to her. Not so much because I didn't really know much about it. I intentionally tried not to watch any spoilers beforehand, which was really hard, especially if you're a YouTuber, because there's on top of the banner for YouTube, there was Star Wars trailers running all the time. So I tried to watch as little of it as possible. I kind of knew some of who the characters that we were going to be meeting during the movie were and who was playing some of them, but not all of them. So some of the actual casting choices were a surprise to me. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But overall, it's going to be, if you like Star Wars, you're going to love this movie. I have two kind of main takeaways from it, one good and one bad. One, the good thing is, a lot of times when you watch these kinds of movies that build on existing franchises with a lot of history, they always try to tell the super fans, just remember, it's only a movie. It's not magic. It's not going to take you back in time. It's not going to bring you back your childhood. It's just a movie, and enjoy it, and try not to get too worked up over it. That was the kind of attitude I was taking going into it. Usually when I watch Star Wars Episode 7, when I watch Rogue One, when I watch Last Jedi, I always just kind of went in with the attitude of just please don't do anything too terribly stupid. Please don't mess it up. That's kind of my expectation. Just don't ruin it. And that's kind of the expectation I came in with this time. But this movie totally delivered. It did make me feel not young again, but it did bring back those feelings of excitement and adventure that I had when I watched episodes 4, 5, and 6. Now, I'm not old enough to where my dad took me. Well, I think I am old enough where my dad could have taken me to the movies to see the original 4, 5, and 6 in theaters. I don't think that we did that, but I do remember watching them very, very young. I really kind of fell in love with the franchise in the mid-90s when they remastered 4, 5, and 6. And I think there might have been a new cantina scene or something like that in there. As they were preparing to re-release the movies, they were already out on VHS, but they were preparing to release them on DVD and or possibly Laserdisc. And at the same time, there was also a new video game that came out. I think it was for the Nintendo 64. So me and my buddy from high school, he was a super fan already. He kind of drew me in even further into the universe. And so that's kind of my background, and my love for it has kind of just been there ever since 2 winters ago. I'll post a link to it up here. My running buddy and I ran a half marathon as stormtroopers because we thought that would be fun. And so that's kind of my Star Wars pedigree. But going back to this movie just had just a lot of that same energy of fun and camaraderie. A lot of those same feelings that I had were there. So it really just delivered. They've released these new episodes, 7, 8, and they're just going to keep making them. And in between, they're going to have these kind of offshoot side stories. And my take on it is 7, 8, 9, those episodes, since they can't reboot episodes 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, and 3. Although maybe if they rebooted those, that wouldn't be too bad. But if they rebooted 4, 5, and 6, I think everyone would freak out. No one really wants that. If they did reboot those, they can't. And so instead, what they're doing is to have 7, 8, and 9. Those serve as the reboot. Those are to get new Star Wars fans drawn into the universe. Whereas these Star Wars stories, the ones that are going to be released in between the episodic movies, those are going to be the ones for the existing fans. And so far that trend seems to be right, as the ones that I really like are Rogue One and Solo. Those are just really, really good. I really enjoy those because usually they pick some small nugget, some small piece, and then expound more fully on it. And because there isn't like a lot about those pieces that they're choosing, I think they have a lot more freedom to write a story. And so Solo, it's not a movie about Skywalkers, it's not a movie about the Force, and so it's not a movie about the overall balance of Force in the galaxy. And so there's more that you could do, especially because Han Solo and his origin story is more of a space pirate, space entrepreneur kind of story, where he is ultimately a good guy, but doing not so above board things. And so he's getting himself into some situations, and it's just a lot of fun. The other thing that I'll mention, number 2, is the thing that I didn't like as much, and that's kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy influence. That Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm a big fan. I didn't really read the comic, but I'm a huge fan of the movies. They're just so much fun. It's like a movie, like those movies are showing something that like I haven't seen before, not just in terms of the special effects, but in terms of the storyline and what's happening. So I'm a big fan of what's going on there. And just like the comedic pace is very different than a lot of other movies that I've seen, especially in kind of like this space, sci-fi, fantasy genres. And I think that's influencing Star Wars. And so we first saw that, the kind of like the quick jokes, the fast jokes, like the action comedy star. We saw that first when we were introduced to Poe Dameron. Like the first thing he ever did was he told us a joke, right? And so that I think is very different, and that's a different feel for what Star Wars is. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's different. And so when I'm thinking about like what makes these episodes, how do they fit, it's not just like that they also have X-Wings and that there's also TIE fighters that connect these stories. I think there has to be some sort of, I want like the directors and the story writers to have some leeway to introduce new types of characters that kind of act, behave, and function in different ways. Like it still has to feel like Star Wars all the way through, and I'm not really sure what that really means. But we're starting to see more of like the quick jokes that you'll see in the Marvel universe. You see that a lot. You see that in the Thor movies. You see that in Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not a huge Marvel movies fan. I see basically whatever my brothers-in-law take me to whenever we're back in Iowa. But of those that I've seen, there's a different like tenor, tone, and pace, right? And so some of that is influencing into the Star Wars movie. Even when you get into Last Jedi, in the whole like Rey and Kylo Ren kind of like the mental FaceTime that they have. You know, one of the things she does is like, can you just put on like a shirt or something, and because he didn't have a shirt on and that was distracting her. And so like those kinds of jokes, I think we saw some of that in Star Wars, but there's just a lot more of it, and they're trying really hard to inject that into it. And so I feel that kind of influence there, and it doesn't feel right. These are different galaxies, and it just doesn't fit to me. To the extent that, and here's where there might be some, not spoilers, but things that if you're trying to avoid all kind of information about it, I'll do this when I'm done talking about it in case you just want to fast forward along the bottom. Some of the casting choices I thought were interesting, and so in Guardians of the Galaxy there's a very strong like father son or like anti-hero father and orphan son kind of story. That's a big part of the tension that's going on there. You see the exact same thing in Solo, the Star Wars movie, even to the point where some of the crew of the space pirates in Solo are same and talk the same and act the same as some of the crew in Guardians of the Galaxy, another crew of space pirates. And so like that just throws me off a little bit, that like there's just, you have an entire Star Wars galaxy of types of characters to work with. You don't have to like be like, oh, that worked really good for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, so let's inject that here as well. I wish that it would just do its own thing, especially because there's such richness already upon which to draw from. You don't have to draw from another Galaxy story. So that's the end of like the part that might be considered spoilerish, but overall I just really love the movie. Thank you for CCS Technologies, which is the company that invited my wife and a guest of hers, me, to come out into this private screening. It was at this weird movie theater, and I don't really go to a lot of movies where like the seats were like super comfy. It was like my recliner had an electronic recliner. There's like a button so you can recline your feet up and down. There's like a button so you can order food, like dinner. So it was like a dinner in a movie kind of place. So that was awesome. They took care of it. They got us the advanced screening. They got us the private showing, and it was just super awesome to be able to watch this movie. I absolutely loved it, and just had a great time. In some other news, today is going to be a rest day. I'm not really tapering for this 10-mile run that's going to be tomorrow, Soldier Field 10 mile. It's one of my favorite races. I'm really excited to run it. I'm going to pick up my packet today and just try to take it easy. I just won't run today, so I'm going to have like a 1-day taper. I guess if you think about it, like a 47-hour taper. The race starts really early tomorrow morning. Gun time is 7 o'clock, but it's going to be hot. It's going to be like one of the hottest days of the year, and every year that I've run the Soldier Field 10, it has always been very hot. And so I'm expecting a hot one tomorrow. My goal for this, I don't know if I'll be able to hit it, is to run 7-minute miles. So I'm looking for a 1 hour, 10-minute finish time. We'll see if I can do that. Last year, I didn't really know what I was going to be able to do, and we ended up running in about 1 hour and 15 minutes and change. So I'm looking to improve on that by quite a bit. We'll see if we get there. But today I'm just going to take it easy and enjoy the Friday afternoon. I think my wife and I are both going to take off work a little bit early and try and grab a nice drink on a patio somewhere before we have to pick up the girls. But yeah, I mean, that's not really a great way to prepare for a race, but it is finally starting to feel like summer in Chicago, and that is the best time to be in Chicago. So thanks for watching. It's a little bit different than the normal content, but you know, I don't run every day. I run about 6 days out of 7 on average, so today's going to be my rest day.
Yo, what's going on?